Hey everyone, this is Nathan Kaiser, and this is a quick overview of a proposed assimilation process for Westside Community Church. Should be 20 minutes or less. Um, so you're gonna have to stick with me because I'm gonna have to make this super quick. If I give a bunch of background, I tried recording this a couple of times, and when I give background and best practice and research, it quickly becomes like a 40, 50-minute presentation. So we're just gonna go through a flow chart and hopefully a little bit of background information to get you up to speed. But hang on because I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible to keep the time constraint down. So I'm going to start by saying what is the goal of our assimilation process, and the simplest way to put it is our goal should be to foster meaningful relationships so that the individual can quickly, purposefully, and with focus move into the discipleship phase. How do we do this? We have to understand that the assimilation process needs to have a beginning, and it needs to have a end. You need to get into the assimilation process, and you need to get out of it so that we can get you into this discipleship process. The beginning is when you first come to church, so first visit, and the end is when you connect. And the connection should be a relational connection. We're going to talk about why that is later on. Our connection cards do a really good job with this, so we're going to stick to kind of what we have. You have a first-time guest, you have a second-time guest, you have a regular attender, and you also have a member. Now, we're going to focus on trying to get people, if we draw this out a little bit here, let's actually draw this out. So you have, whoa, that is not what undo that. Okay. So I'm going to say that the first and second time guests are in the assimilation phase, and we're categorizing people broadly here, but that's okay. Regular members, attenders, we're hoping we could get them into the disciple phase, and our goal is how do we quickly move people through this phase. Yes, it's a holding hands process because they're first coming into the church, and we need to get them through the assimilation phase as quickly as possibly so that then they can get on their own spiritual journey in the disciple phase. What we want to try and do is we want to try and close this gap. This is a danger zone. This is a void where people, if they do not get connected purposefully, we're going to lose them in a void. So our goal is, how do we get people to this discipleship phase through this void as quickly and with as much purpose as possible? We do that basically by building relationships. So these are relationships, and we build upon these relationships to create disciples. So this process, this flow chart that I'm going to show you, the whole goal is to quickly move people through this. All right. The next, let's erase all these. There's a good blog by Dave Bair and Steve Caton. They're part of a organization called Church Community Builder. They have a product that they sell. However, they've got a 4-point system into how to get people through the assimilation process. I'll have a link to their research / blog / products in the description. But basically it breaks down into 4 things. So you have hospitality, you have info gathering, you have follow-up, and you have connection. And these are the 4 parts that they say are vital for assimilation. Now, what I'm going to focus on in this talk is the info gathering and the follow-up. That's what the flow chart that I'm going to show you is based around. Chart. A little bit of connection. That's the end result. Again, we have a beginning and an end, so the end is connection. We're not going to talk about hospitality at all. So let's jump right into the flow chart. Oh, at the end, I'm going to hopefully be able to have some time to touch on something that Tom Rainier says is a good overview of the assimilation process, and he calls it the assimilation rectangle, and that will come into play here in the flow chart. We're going to look at a flow chart that I made, and this flow chart, I want to first show you the basics of it, and the basics is the left-hand side. This is if we, and this is specifically talking about information gathering and follow-up, so 2 of the 4 that were in the Dave and Steve Church Community Builder recommendations. This is how do we get information from people and how do we follow up with them to move them through the assimilation process. Now, this is a best case scenario. On the right-hand side, I just have the big picture because it doesn't fit into the whole screen. On the left-hand side, I'll zoom in so that you can see and read what each one of them talk about. This is a best case scenario, so this flowchart does get bigger. But let's just go through best case scenario. We have a first-time guest that comes into the church. What do? Well, we send them an email and a phone call. Now, it's an email and a phone call if we get both of those pieces of information from them. Obviously, we need to get their email address and their phone number. If we get both of those, we send them an email and we call them. If we get an email, then we only send an email. If we get a phone call or a number, then we only call them. This has to happen. Here's what's important about this. This has to happen on the Sunday that they attend church for the first time. Let me explain why that's important. That's important because if we are sending an email halfway through the week or making a phone call halfway through the week, sometimes they don't get to them and it kind of gets put in the back of the, or on the back burner. If you send somebody an email or a phone call on the day that they are going to church, it starts to ingrain in them that something is supposed to be happening on Sunday. So when the next Sunday runs around, they remember, hey, I got an email or a phone call, maybe I should be in church again. If everything, and the point is that every one of our communications in this assimilation process, and again, this is just the assimilation process, there's plenty of good reasons to have communication midweek, but we're quickly trying to get people through this assimilation process, so we only send communications on the Sunday because we're trying to connect information with the day that you should be coming to church, and that's important in the first 3 or 4 weeks. You can see we have 4 steps of communication. That's 4 weeks. We're going to have an email/survey that gets sent out for at least 4 weeks. If you go through the assimilation process and you do it, best case scenario, you're only going to get 4 requests of information for us, or 4 contacts with us. So, again, best case scenario, they get the basic welcome email. There is no next step in this. And the reason that there's no next step is because we do not yet want to overburden somebody who just came into the church with having to connect too much too soon. So we just want them to come back. Did they come back? If the answer is yes, fantastic. You get a thank you email, and now we're going to send our first survey. I'm calling this a spiritual journey survey. Here's the important thing about surveys. Anytime we ask for a piece of information from somebody, we have to do something with that information. We can't just gather information for the sake of gathering information. So what are we going to do with this information that we get from them? It's going to be a quick survey, probably only 4 questions, and it's a survey of that we could place them into a category of: are you exploring, are you beginning, are you growing, or are you expanding? The reason why we do this is because we already have this system in place. We have this growth group system in place that follows the exploring, beginning, growing, expanding. So right now we want to gain the information from the individual on which category they self-identify with. We're going to use this information later on, and actually you can see that, so here, we're going to use this information later on here down the road. We're not going to use it right away. We don't have to get the information and then bam, hit them with something, but we do have to gain the information so that later down the road we can use this. So this information could be put into an Excel spreadsheet, it could be put in whatever system we have that we can track the individual's progression. It's information that we say that we could later use. Okay, so best case scenario. Did they come back? Yes. Let's start to move. Let me move this down so we can see the rest of the page. Okay. Did they come back? So now you've gone past the second time guest. You're here for a third time. Okay. We get you into a Discover Westside email, trying to sign you up, or at least letting you know when the next Discover Westside is. The reason we do this is very important. It will come into effect, or come into play, when I talk about the Tom Rainier assimilation triangle a little bit later, is that one of the things we have to do is set expectations early on. You have to set the expectations of the new person as early as possible. The reason for that is because we don't want people coming back 3, 4, 5 months down the road and are now having a conflict with the church, with the vision or mission or values of the church, because we did not set the expectations early on. It's unfair to us to not set expectations early, or it's unfair to the person if the church does not set the expectations early on. They don't know what they're getting into. Um, there's also a disciple survey. Okay, so I've actually thought about maybe trying to hit this later because this is 2 points of action. However, let's just go with this right now. This disciple survey, again, this is another piece of information, but the information that we're trying to gather here is, this is more of a, let's consider this a spiritual gifts survey, although we're definitely not going to be doing one of those 80 or 100 question spiritual gift surveys, because we won't get any data back because we're just asking too much of somebody. It could be a 10 or less survey that could give us a basic overview on what your spiritual gifts are, or where you would best serve. Is that hospitality? Is that tech? Is it somewhere in worship? Is it a leadership position? Again, information that we are going to use later down the road, and actually it goes later down the road here. You don't see this yet. We're going to see this in the next expansion of the flowchart. Okay. Did they sign up? Again, best case scenario. Yes, they signed up. Great. We get you connected into a growth group. The growth group survey this is where we have now, we're going back up. We're taking the information that we got from here, from step 2, from are you exploring, beginning, growing, or expanding? And now we are using that information into putting you into a growth group. So if we're in the growth group season, we say, hey, we have these that are running on these days that fit into what you said. We really hope that you sign up for one of these. If we're outside of one, that's okay, because we usually have at least because this is the way we have our growth groups set up, we at least have the categories figured out. So we can say, hey, we want you to look for this when the growth groups come out, and then we're going to remind you up until the day that as we're gearing up for the growth group season, we're going to send you reminders of getting into a group that's exploring or beginning or growing or expanding. So did you sign up for the growth group? Fantastic. Yes. Gold star. This is the end of the assimilation process, because at this point you have connected. If we get here, we've gotten to step 4 in the assimilation process, as drawn out by Dave and Steve, saying that, have you connected? I mean, are we done? No. Are we done with the assimilation process? Absolutely. We're done with the hand-holding process of quickly, with purpose, with focused purpose, trying to get somebody out of a phase where we're trying to get you connected and into a phase where you can now go out on your own because you've gained relationships, and you can learn to disciple inside the community. All right, so let's blow this up to the. Gotta get out of this. Let's go to the large flow chart. So here's the flow chart in its entirety. On the right-hand side, you see how it flows all the way, but I have to zoom in so that you can actually read it. Obviously, everything's still all the same on the left-hand side. That's where we want everybody. We want to drive you to the left-hand side because that's where you make all the progress. However, it's not always as pretty as that. So what happens if you say, no, we got a first-time guest, we send out the email, that's always going to happen. Did they come back? If the answer is no, we're going to send you a missed you email. Notice that we still have not sent out any next steps for that person. That's fine. We just want you to come back. Also, this doesn't, maybe the person is already, maybe they did come to a second service, but they didn't check the box, like I'm a second-time guest. That's okay. We're still going to send you the missed you email, 1, because we don't know, and 2, because we want to instill in you, in the new person, that this is how you communicate with the church. We want to get you used to filling out that green connection card. So if you don't indicate that you're a second-time guest, guess what? You're going to get a missed you email, and they're going to go, oh, shoot, how do I was here. Oh, okay, well, then the next time I'm going to say I'm a second-time guest, or maybe a member, it doesn't matter, however they identify, and then they're going to get back on this track. So it doesn't matter if they're showing up to church or not. This is, are you connecting with us on the green connection card? Because that's how we get information from you. That's how we follow up with you. So we need to start getting people to really pay attention to filling that kind of stuff out. All right, what if you go back in the other direction? No, it's starting to get yellow, meaning that we're getting pretty close to losing you here. So now you get to the point where we are going to send out a email that's inviting questions and a contact phone call if we have their phone number. The inviting questions is saying, okay, hey, we'd really, can you explain to us, why you haven't come back? We'll have to think out these questions, but basically it's like, hey, if you have questions for us, we want to answer them before you leave completely. So we send out an email inviting you to connect. If it is a phone call, this is one of the things. If this is a phone call because we have their number, I suggest that this needs to be a staff member. This needs to be somebody who can answer for the church, because maybe at this point they're not coming back because they have some disagreement with philosophies behind the church or whatever it may be. For that reason, because we're on the brink of losing this person, or maybe we already have, this should be a staff member, somebody who can represent the church and its values. Did they come back? No. If we get to this no, that's the red. We basically lost you at this point. But we still need to gather information from you. Just because you're not coming to church doesn't mean that we can't gather information. So we do a what could we do better email. You very well may get your first amount of information back from people at this point, because this is their chance to like vent and say how, well, this, I didn't like this about the church, I didn't like this about the church, I didn't like that about the church. That doesn't matter if it's all negative information or what we perceive as negative information. It's okay, it's still information. We could do a check and balance on is this going against our value? If we see a common thread, like we get 10 or 15 of these back, and the staff comes together and says, okay, it's time for us to review all of our what could we do better emails. Maybe we do this like quarterly, or just whenever you get like 10 or 12 of them. There could be a trigger point where everyone comes together and reviews them. And sure, a lot of it may be people aren't coming back because they don't fit into the value system of Westside. But what if there's information that's coming back that kind of weaves in and out a consistency of something that is a value of Westside, and we're not meeting that value? Then that's something that should be looked at being changed. So just because people aren't coming back doesn't mean we can't get information from them. In fact, we may get some very good retrospective look in the mirror type of information from these people. So make sure that we're still gaining information from them. All right, let's go down to 2. So we talked about getting the we talked about the spiritual survey. Did they come? Well, okay. So now we're at the. Did they come back? No. We're still going to get you a missed you email. We're not doing a next step yet because we haven't. They haven't consistently shown that they're committed to coming back to the church. So we still don't want to overbear them with anything. In fact, they can quite easily move into the never coming back and having to do the what could we do better email. But the point is, if we could do the missed you email, if they come back, boom, right back onto the left-hand side. This is where we get into the Discover Westside email with a disciple survey, which we already talked about. Let's move on since we've actually already hit. For time's sake, I'm not going to go too much into all that kind of stuff. Let's go on to the bottom. Since we've already talked about the left side, let's scroll down here. Okay. So Discover Westside, we're at step 3. Did you sign up? No. Are you attending? Let me quickly cover this one. Are you attending? Yes. You can see at this point we actually don't have. We're just skipping over this part. So did you not sign up for a Westside email? And if the answer is no, but you are consistently attending, we're still going to try to connect you. Just because you're not going to go to a Discover Westside workshop, hey, we want you to, but if you're just not going to do it, we can't force you to. We're still going to get you connected. We're not going to lose you at this step because you didn't, the individual didn't complete step 3. So that's what this Are You Attending track is, to get you back online here, because the end goal is Are You Connecting? So that's why that one's there. All right, at the end, growth group survey, did you sign up? Yay, if you get down to the gold star, gold happy face, fantastic. Here's where it gets a little interesting. If you didn't, all right, so maybe you're not going up for a growth group we are inviting people who maybe this is their first time into the church, never done a Bible study before. That kind of intimidates them. They don't feel comfortable going to somebody else's house. That intimidates them. Fine. Now we take the information that we got from step 3. So up here, remember we got the leadership, hospitality. This is your spiritual gifts survey, right? And now we're going to take that information. Remember, we don't ask for information if we're not going to use it. So we take that information and we apply it to this surveying email and survey. Meaning, hey, we'd love to connect you with the hospitality group. We'd love to connect you with the tech group. We'd love to connect you because you've answered this way. We're going to try and get you connected in a relationship this way. Okay. Did they sign up? If the answer is still no, this should probably be red. I might even change that. Because if you haven't signed up at this point, we're losing you possibly to the danger zone. Remember, we had let's erase everything here. Remember, we have the first, second, regular, and member, and right in here is that void, and this is the danger zone. When somebody gets to this point right here, that's when you become a bench warmer. If we don't at least try to get them connected somehow, we run the risk of them sitting 3 or 4 months inside this danger zone of no personal relationship, no connection, and then they're not going to move out of the assimilation process and into the discipleship. So our last ditch effort is this one. It's the personal member contact. We try to get somebody hooked up with a leader. Now, does not, by any stretch of the imagination, this does not need to be a staff member. This actually should be probably a leader in the community. So we connect men with men, we connect women with women, and it should be a leader and probably and definitely a member of the church. We connect them. If they have an email, then maybe they'll have an email connection. Phone, maybe they have a phone connection, they talk on the phone. Not saying that they have to disciple this person for 6 months or a year, just saying that they have to try to be the person that connects them with and runs them through some of the steps and trying to get them to connect with people in the church on a relational level so that we could get them into a discipleship. Let's see if there's anything else I really want to mention about that. Okay, so for sake of time, let's just blast on. That's the end of that one. So I think I have enough time. I'm going to very quickly try to talk about I'm going to try and talk about this Tom Rainier assimilation triangle. I wish I had this set up. This will add just a little bit of time. So this is something, the rectangle is something that Tom Rainier talks about. There's 4 sides of the rectangle, and they're the 4 basically corners of the assimilation process. I'm taking his 4 ideas, and then I'm going to expand upon them. So I'll have his information in the description as well, but you're basically just going to see his triangle and the 4 corners, and then everything else beyond that is all mine. So this is expectations. So this is what we were talking about with the Westside 101 class, or the What is Westside? This corner is relationships. Ships. This is really hard for me to write. I apologize, being left-handed. This is convictional preaching, so let's just call this teaching. I'm going to stay out. This corner is, outside of my scope. We're not going to talk about that. That's just, are people coming because there's good teaching, is all that's talking about. And then this is involvement. And that would be like growth groups and serving. So my idea is that, picture this table. So this is where I kind of go off on my explanation. So take this table and then picture it as like a tablecloth, or just a surface that, if you put weight onto it, is going to create a indentation. It's going to create a draw towards wherever that weight is. Kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen, how do you do it with the gravity, right? You do the space-time, and you put out a big old sheet, and then you put a big weight on it, and that's how gravity is actually distorted And that's why we have like orbits and all that kind of stuff. So if that helps, I don't know, that's the one that helps me, is that we're putting a weight, and then on, you know, the on gravity and anything that comes within something that weighs more than itself, it's going to start to orbit or fall down towards the larger weight. Yeah, that was probably more than we needed to. But our goal is we want people in the center, because the center of this rectangle means that you, as the individual, you know, are gaining information, or you're getting something from all four corners. You're well, you know, this is what we would call a well-rounded person, somebody who gains something out of the teaching. So actually, if we did it this way, if we thought about this as, where's the energy flowing? If this is the person, and where, you know, the person is getting something, maybe the energy is flowing from the teaching into the person, but they're taking that energy, and that they're taking energy from themselves, and they're getting helping by being involved in the church. I mean, this could also be both ways. Maybe they're getting some energy from the involvement that they have in the church. Relationships, again, that's a, you know, a two-way arrow. They could be, you know, different lengths. Maybe they're getting more than they're receiving in the relationship. But expectations should be something that the church, you know, puts on towards the individual. So that arrow is mostly going to work in this direction, you know, if anything, maybe a little bit in that direction. Okay, so if we go back to the weight analogy, I think of this as like four doors. So think of these four corners as four doors, and the doors are entry points into the church. They're also exit doors. So we got to make sure that we keep our open doors, you know, our doors wide open for entry, but we close as many of them as we can for the exit. Most individuals are going to enter into the church because of one of two things. They've either heard that, hey, this place has some fantastic teaching, I heard there's a great preacher, and they come to the church because of that. Or a friend or a family member brings them, and they come because of a relationship. Now, here's one of the things. When I talked about weight, so let's, you know, that's not a big weight, but that's not what a weight looks like, but here, it's a 100-pound weight, right? If we have a 100-pound weight and we place it in this corner, and this is a sheet, you're going to put a indentation in this area, and it's going to be hard for somebody who's, you know, around this weight to break this orbit, you know? It's hard to come out over here when all the weight is centered in the teaching. It's hard if you come in and you only have a relationship because of your friends. It's hard for you to get out of that. If all your weight, if all of your personal emphasis is on this point, it's hard for you to go do stuff on your own, like going to a Westside info class, or getting involved outside of your comfort area, right? This is your comfort area. So I fully recognize that most of our people are going to come through these two areas, right? But our job, because you're not going to have somebody come through the door of expectations, they might exit through the door of expectations. That's why we have to try and close that door. How do we close that door? We do it by setting the expectations early in the assimilation process so that they know what they're getting into. Involvement might be an exit door, but I mean, how do we do that? How do we close that exit door? Well, we create good relationships that keep people involved in the church, and they become fully invested. They become personally invested, so that they don't feel burdened by I have to be involved. No, it's I want to be involved and I want to help. All right. So our goal is to take the weight off of these areas, and if they come through, this is what the assimilation process does. If you come through, let's actually take these off. If you come through because you heard Westside's got some great teaching, okay, fantastic, glad you're here. We're gonna push you. This is us holding hands so that you don't get stuck here in this weight. We're gonna push you to see the expectations of the church, to have relationships, to get involved, so that you get a taste of all those, and hopefully by the end of the assimilation process, you are somewhere in the middle. You're a well-rounded person. Same thing for relationships. We don't want you to get bogged down with you're comfortable here because your mom brought you in or because your friends brought you in. We need to, in the assimilation process, break that comfort zone so that, it probably goes, let's be realistic here. They're going to gain something out of the teaching, especially at Westside. Most of the people always gain something out of the teaching, but so they're going to be drawn towards this side, and then we start to push towards the expectations and the involvement so that you become centered. We can't live, because right now, the way that we're set up is we can live in these two corners because we ask people to come in by inviting them through their friends or their family members, and we do have great convictional teaching. We can't. This is all well and good, and none of this is bad, but we can't live here because we're missing half of the puzzle. And if we live in this lower half of the rectangle, discipleship is outside of this rectangle, right? Discipleship happens when you get inside this center, and you go through this wormhole and you go into another dimension. That's discipleship. But you're not going to be able to go through the wormhole if we're only giving you half the picture. So our job is to make sure that you get a taste of all the corners so that you end up as part of the assimilation process right here, as close as possible to the middle, and then exit. I just thought about this. Let's consider this target. That's that's you exiting the assimilation process. That's your black hole to get out of the assimilation process and into the next dimension of discipleship. Okay, that's 32 minutes. This is as short as I've been able to make this thing. There is so much more. There's reason behind this. There's research behind this. There's the why behind this. There's more how. But I don't expect anybody to listen to me for more than 30 minutes. I might even try this a couple more times to see if I could get it down to like 20. But if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. And I hope that, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.